When I first reviewed Noteey over 3 months ago, despite I felt the potential in the app, I struggled to see how it would fit in my personal use. However, the team's rapid feature additions have changed my perspective, and I am now using it daily for what I refer to as personal project management purpose. Today, I'd like to share how I use Noteey for this purpose and addressing specific features that made this workflow possible. While this is not a sponsored video, after last review, Noteey's developer provided me with a Desktop Pro Plus license to thoroughly test the app. However, I believe that for this specific use case, the free tier should work fine for most people. Let's get started. Before I share you my use case example, I want to define the term personal project. Now, I know everyone has their own idea of what the project is, but I like to use it as what Tiago Forte calls a project in his Power method. Basically, they are things that have a short-term deadline or goal. This could be a collaborative team project at work, but I want to keep things a bit smaller today, especially in Noteey, which currently does not support simultaneous editing. So I call personal projects to keep the project scope just only for one person. Here are some examples. Learning about a new concept, for instance, let's say you've never heard of the term Power method in PKM. Your goal is to learn about Power method. While there might not be a specific due date, the goal is clear and the scale is relatively small. So this is a personal knowledge acquisition research project. Planning a vacation, for example, you've decided to travel to Japan during your next vacation. It might be your first time visiting there, so you'd like to gather all the information about the upcoming trip. While the questions might be a bit more abstract, like what do I do in Japan, where to stay in Japan, and you probably come up with more questions as you research, there's a clear short-term upcoming due date. This is a planning project. Today, I want to share one of my recent personal projects I did with Noteey, a new gadget shopping project. I already have a few smart power plugs, but none of them have an energy monitor, and the last smart plug I bought was years ago. So I wanted to find out what the best smart plug on the market for me right now. While there is no specific due date, I know this won't take more than a few hours. The end result or output is clear: to find a new smart plug brand model that I would buy. Once I find something interesting, I get hooked right away and like to take deep dive into the topic. So not surprisingly, this simple new smart plug search turned out to also incorporate a learning new concept as well. One thing to note is that some of Noteey's features were added after I finished this project, so they are retrofitted in the places where I would have used them if they were available during the project. To give the sense of why I find Noteey being a great tool for personal project management, I would organize today's video based on various components of Noteey. I find infinite canvas or whiteboard is essential when learning complex topic or researching about complex topic, as they feel never a linear process for me. The main advantage of a digital whiteboard over regular notes is that it lets you organize your ideas in a two-dimensional way. You can put side-by-side notes, group related information in different areas, and easily rearrange everything as you add more content. It's worth noting that in Noteey, you can place any kind of file type on the whiteboard. It feels like you have real infinite digital canvas. Noteey looked to be originally designed as a single project management app, like PowerPoint for presentation. Unlike many other personal knowledge management systems, we don't directly create board or canvas. Instead, we create a project, which contains one or more boards. This intrinsic built-in grouping of boards allows intuitive scaling of a project. For my research on the smart plugs, I didn't think they'd need more than a single whiteboard, but I've realized that category of smart home might include many related boards over time since it's part of my hobby. In fact, as I was working on my current shopping project, I stumbled upon Matter and Thread. These are network-related technologies that are relevant for modern IoT devices. Since none of my existing IoT devices supported these protocols, they were quite new to me. So I decided to divert from searching smart plug 1 and first learn more about them, so I could decide if these are essential for my new smart plug or not. Noteey's project grouping feature came in handy here. Since I started using Noteey, they've added the ability to nest projects, which is super helpful for organizing things. I could create projects for Matter and Thread under the current smart plug whiteboard, or probably more appropriately, create a parental project whiteboard that include both the smart plug whiteboard and these two technology-related whiteboards. But here's the thing, Noteey already has project grouping, and I named it my current project as Smart Home. So all I had to do was add new boards under current project. As a bonus feature, Noteey allows you to set custom thumbnail for project, which is much appreciated visual enhancement for UI thinkers. YouTube is a fantastic resource for learning different topics. Just like regular books, it's much more helpful when we know not only the original source, but also where the original source, the reference comes from. In the past, I've used manual referencing with the URL of the YouTube video, the timestamp, and quick note. The problem was that whenever I found something worth saving as a reference, I had to stop, rewind, and write down the time. It wasn't uncommon that after listening further down the video, they turned out to be not what I expected. Basically, I've ended up wasting way too much time doing this. Since my last review, Noteey has introduced an in-app video highlight feature. This feature enables users to swiftly capture notes while watching videos, and the timestamp is automatically saved. Notably, these notes are now function as highlights in text, allowing users to drag and drop them onto the whiteboard and cards, which is Note in Noteey. They retain the original reference to the exact location of the video. This enhancement improves my workflow. Once I finished watching video about the smart plug reviews, I drag and drop specific highlights notes that I found important onto the whiteboard. This way, I am able to easily access the core information about the video without having to re-watching it or reopening it. And of course, if I want to watch the section, this highlight object takes me right back to the exact video location. The other primary resource format is online website reviews. There are currently two ways for working with web pages in Noteey. The first method entails directly embedding a web page as one of the objects in the whiteboard. This approach is straightforward and intuitive, as all that is required is to copy a URL link and paste it anywhere on the whiteboard. However, this approach presents several limitations. First, not all websites are compatible with this method. When a website fails to embed, a blank zone with a small hyperlink icon appears in the corner. Clicking on this icon opens the original web page in the browser, but without any labels, rendering it essentially useless. In fact, more websites that I use fail to embed than successfully embedded. Another significant limitation of embedding web pages on the whiteboard is that there are no additional features beyond basic viewing access. We cannot open a page in sidebar, tag these web objects, highlight them, or even perform simple drag and drop text operations to extract some information from the page. Essentially, interaction with embedded web objects currently is virtually non-existent. The second method is preferred approach. In this method, we copy and paste a web page into a card object on a whiteboard. While Noteey's card object offers rich text formatting and image embedding capabilities, it cannot preserve the full formatting of most web pages. However, in reality, many web pages contain advertisements and we generally do not want to copy and paste them directly. Therefore, I typically use the Reader View feature to extract the content and then copy it. This method works fairly well. Although some web pages may not render well even with the Reader View, at this point, I feel the blame should probably go to the site design itself. It's also worth noting that pasting images from the website this way creates locally accessible image within the Noteey's card itself. The reason why I mention this is because some of the PKM app I've used do not work well with copy and pasting images this way, and they require manually adding image individually afterward. Once I have pasted a web page content into the card, I create a top section using the separator line. Here I immediately place the original website link. Later, I may add my own summary of the content here as well. One of the latest new feature addition to Noteey is very impactful here, which is the card object highlighting. This feature enables us to highlight card's content and create highlighted objects that reference the exact location within the card, which is similar to PDF or video highlights. In current use case, this almost feels like built-in Readwise app, which is an app that allows you to highlight any web page, and apps that have integration with it can take those highlights. But Readwise has their own monthly subscription, and how well they are integrated within a given personal knowledge management app depends on the app itself. Also, going back to the original resource, which is stored in the Readwise app, usually require online connection. So for some of us, the Noteey's approach might even be seen as more useful. I'd like to mention that developer has mentioned that they are considering working on web bookmark object. This appears to be visually enhanced hyperlink object for web pages. Since they will be supported to be added to a library, we should be able to tag them and reuse them in a multiple whiteboard. This can also replace a situation where currently iframe embedding is failing to render. One of the lesser known features, or perhaps undervalued feature in Noteey, is its ability to open any file format using a default file system application. This is really handy because it means you can easily access all your files no matter what format they are in. Noteey has a super user-friendly interface that lets you drag and drop any file onto the board, just like you would with other supported file format like PDF. These files are then added to the library, so you can easily reference them from other projects. One cool thing about Noteey is that you can also directly link to the local file using system path, or create a Noteey specific copy of the file. This is especially useful for large files or those stored on local network attached storage devices, because we don't want to create duplicates. I often work on projects that involve more than just the usual file formats like PDF, video, web pages, and notes. I might also use spreadsheet for comparison or have Word documents as references. And sometimes I even have a proprietary file formats that you wouldn't expect any PKM app to support natively. Conceptually, I want is to have a folder that contains all the relevant material about the project, which is basically the core concept of the Para method by Tiago Forte. But in the other apps, this isn't an easy. As other PKMs separate non-supported files from the app itself, I have to manually create links between those files and PKM notes. This involves uploading the file to a cloud storage service, getting the corresponding link, and then adding to our notes. While this works, it's a bit of a hassle and it makes me less efficient. And as the number of files stored in this way increases, I start to feel the need to organize them in the cloud drive, which introduces its own set of problems. Apps like Obsidian let us organize our notes and files directly using folder structuring of our computer. But here's a catch. They use actual folder structure of our computer, which means that if I want to reference multiple instances of the same file at multiple locations, it introduces traditional limitation of hierarchy note versus network note taking, which means creating duplicates or requiring a constant changing folder organization. That's why I really like Noteey's approach to handle file objects. They make it easy to keep your files organized and clutter-free. For the current shopping project, couple brands look to be potentially a choice immediately. TP-Link Tapo and Casa, for those of you who care. However, both were built by the same company, TP-Link, and the difference looked subtle. So I've decided to create a spreadsheet, which in my case numbers up, to compare them based on specs, price per unit, and other specifications. The category for comparison continued to get revision as I learn more about the smart plugs. In the end, this comparison table turned out to be one of the main output for current best smart plug hunt project. With Noteey, this file sits right inside of the smart plug whiteboard. If I want to view it, I just need to double click and open it with native numbers app. When I edit and save them, Noteey has the most updated file. It sounds simple, but this was not possible in other PKMs. Since matter and thread are more technical concepts, the reference materials for them were official white papers, which were in PDF format. Similar to card highlight, PDF can be highlighted with Noteey, and those highlight cards can be placed in a whiteboard or cards with direct reference linked back to the source. If every card were added to a library, the library becomes cluttered quickly, and you may have a hard time finding the info you want even with the digital search tool. So we want to have a way to take a note, but only in local context and not show up on global library, as there is no intention to reuse them other than current project. Noteey originally supported this via text object, but these objects did not support any rich text formatting. However, they now allow card object to have hidden status, which allows full card note-taking capability, but in local context. Noteey's implementation of creating contextual specific card is remarkably intuitive. All I need to do is create a regular card and select hide from library option. While I haven't used it in much yet, if you don't need a rich text formatting, Noteey has just recently added a sticky note object. This is another way to add a text note that only appears in the local context of the whiteboard. The power of whiteboard is incomplete without an intuitive way to group and rearrange objects on it. In Noteey, this is achieved quite intuitively using the frame feature. Simply press the F key to create a custom frame size, which can be resized later. Objects within the frame will be treated as a group. You can even give the frame a name. Dragging the frame moves all objects within it together, preserving their relative positions. Regrouping is as easy as dragging an individual object within the frame or out of it. Each frame in the current board is added to the left frame navigation pane. Allow user to quickly jump from one frame to another within the board. Another powerful frame feature is that we can trigger presentation mode based on the frames. This gives us essential full screen slideshow based on each frame in the order of the frame in the navigation panel. I found this presentation more useful than some of the competition. This is because while in the full screen presentation mode, Noteey's objects are clickable, so from the frame I can open individual cards in the side panel. As several sources have been gathered, I have begun to discern that TP-Link's Casa Smart Plugs appears to be the current market leader. However, this observation has prompted me to pose a pertinent question. What distinguishes a TP-Link Cast smart plug from TP-Link Tuple smart plugs? Rather than devising a new board to address this inquiry, I have opted to use a frame to organize relevant information to provide a clear answer to this specific question. For this project, I didn't use Mindmap, but I know some people start projects from Mindmap or organize project content using Mindmap. Recently, Noteey started to allow linking cards on Mindmap's individual nodes. Currently, its topology is limited to right unidirection. Just with any other apps, Noteey has several limitations. Since this isn't meant for a full revised view, I won't be listing all the limitations, but here are a few points to be aware if you are considering to try out Noteey. Noteey is growing fast, which is awesome, but it also means that each update has a few bugs. Some are minor, but some could be major. For example, the latest update has a bug where you can't jump to video highlights from the whiteboard. And guess what? If you click on it, it creates a new copy of a current project. If I was still working on the project and relying on video annotation on the whiteboard, this could have stopped me from continuing until it got fixed. While new features are being introduced quickly, they are not what I call fully polished or easy to use. They are more basic or like a framework, and they might need a few steps to work together. For instance, there's no simple way to add highlighted content to a whiteboard card on the same board. This is a basic interaction that I think is important for using whiteboards. Imagine having all your notes on the same board, grouping relevant objects together, and putting them into the cards to create atomic or zero custom permanent notes. It will be intuitive to just drag highlighted items from the whiteboard to a card on the same board and start building. But that's not supported. Instead, we have to open the right side panel, take a few extra steps to get into split view mode, and then search from the right library card list each item. I've also noticed a few areas where the app could use some smoothing out. The corners and edges feel a bit rough, and the users might notice this compared to other apps or when they are actually using the app. For example, the tags don't have any color, and the drag and drop feature for favorites has a smooth animation, but it's not consistent in other parts of the app. On the bright side, there's a cool project export option that lets you bundle up the entire project into a file. You can then import it back to restore the project or share it with others. But to export, you first have to get it into the project and then export from the upper right corner. I think the project app listing should have a direct way to export them. Another thing that bugs me is the design inconsistency. One area has one way of doing something, another area has another way, and one area offers an option but another doesn't. This can lead users to think that the app doesn't support certain features. For instance, the recent update added a right pane filter for library items that are on current project. But then, right next to it, if you use Highlight tab on the right panel, there's no filtering based on the current project. It's not a major issue, but it's a bit confusing. One another thing that's been bothering me is a cloud sync issue. Noteey has now added a cloud sync option where we can sync Noteey's content between the other PCs via cloud drive like Google Drive or iCloud. This is a much needed feature because previously we had to manually export projects or create backups and send them to another device and then restore them. Noteey hasn't set up a way to warn users when there is a chance to overwriting new data on the cloud drive though. The timing of when the cloud sync item data is ready totally depends on the cloud drive and not on Noteey's control. However, I think Noteey should check and flag users if it looks like the data on the cloud drive is newer than what the user is about to replace with. I recently accidentally did this and lost an entire project I was working on. Luckily, Noteey keeps automatic backups, so I was able to restore it, but it required a few somewhat time-consuming manual steps rather than single restore. Noteey still doesn't have a web or mobile app, but they are working on them. The developer says they'll be probably launching the web app first in the first quarter of 2025. I think most of these limitations are because the developer's design philosophy is to build the framework first, then add details later or in the future. Given the limited resources available, I understand that's a tough decision. I actually like this because this is a reason why Noteey was able to get to where it is now in such a short term. Noteey has changed a lot since I first tried it. It's still not my main PKM, but I now use it for personal projects because it lets me annotate videos, cards, PDF, and organize different types of files in one place. I'm excited to see how it develops in the next few months. Based on what it's done in the past few months, I'm hoping it could become my go-to PKM. Thanks for watching.